Everyone has a story to tell. It's my mission to tell it. Unscripted, unedited, we are on the record. Hi, everyone. I'm Serena Fazan, and thank you so much for joining us for this episode of On the Record. It's a show where we cover a variety of subjects. One of my absolute favorites, positive change in the nation, and positive change inspired by incredible people with their inspiring stories. Two of those people in my studio right now. What an honor. Sandra Murman is here, and Rick Kearney is here. Thank you so much. Rick Kearney actually flew in on his helicopter.
I did.
Right. You are the chairman, and just because I cannot screw this up, I rarely have notes. I don't even. But you are the chairman founder of Mainline Information Systems. It's an IT solutions company headquartered in Tallahassee, Florida. And
right.
But you have to share more about your company. Sandra Murman is a former lawmaker, but is a constant advocate for the community.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you both so much for being here. Rick, why don't we start with you though and share a bit about your company? And come on, humility aside, we have the notes right here of everything you've done.
Okay. Well, I mean, it started out, I used to work for IBM, and I got out to do nonprofit work, but the requirements of life and family and so forth started my own company, started like with a few people, and now we're over 500 employees, $1 billion in sales. But I never lost that mind, that heart for the underserved, the ones that are forgotten, the ones that don't have a place to sleep at night. And so we have a foundational component of our business that we support our local homeless center. I'm the chairman of the board of the homeless center, and we do a lot more than support homelessness. It's education, it's medical, it's substance abuse, it's the whole gambit of what somebody needs to kind of get them back into the mainstream of society, because that's the problem with homelessness.
And we're going to delve into that topic, and that's what this show is about, where we're talking about positive change impacting the community. But before we get into it, Sandy, why don't you share a little bit about your history?
Well, I actually used to work at Xerox.
Oh my gosh, okay, so this is why I love this show.
For
Again,
10 years.
Unedited, unscripted, bringing people together.
Right.
You are kidding. So
Right.
we have IBM and Xerox here.
I know,
Yeah,
two big corporate giants, and I left the corporate world, and like I went into kind of nonprofit. I got very excited about helping kids that have been abused, to really help them have good parents, good life, good future, all the way through. And then, so I went to the legislature from there on that whole issue, and had a really good run. We changed the laws, really did a lot to help kids. It's still tough today, but it's tough because you're dealing with broken situations, broken families, and it's so hard to heal all of it. But I think a lot of agencies are working really hard just because of the stuff we did in the past. Left there, I organized and spearheaded the campaign to build the Glazer Children's Museum downtown Tampa, and then went back to the county commission, and that's how I got involved with homelessness. Todd Lewicki with the Lightning, our county administrator, many community leaders, Guy King, former community leader who just passed away in the past year or two. And we formed a Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative group because there were so many panhandlers out there, and we really wanted to do something community-wide to make a difference.
So, Rick, when you hear that, what are you thinking right now?
I mean, it's universal. I mean, you pick your city in the United States. We all have the same issues. And really, people think of it as homeless issues, right? Well, it's really not. If you were to unravel and rewind the tapes in most people's lives, it all starts with trauma that they had in their life, either as a child or a young adult, mistakes that they made, mistakes that others made around them that created this trauma. So then it creates a mental health disability. And how do we deal with that? Well, we tend to isolate ourselves, or we abuse substances to deal with the pain and the depression that comes from trauma. And so when you indulge in those behaviors, you lose your job, you lose your family, you lose your sustenance, and you become homeless. So homelessness is only just an indicator of a much broader problem.
Yeah.
So, honestly, and again, we're going to delve more into that topic. But the two of you, for a moment, I want to step back again. Both of you worked in the corporate world, and here you are both, I mean, dedicating your lives, your companies, your businesses to helping the community. Are you born with that?
Good question. You know, I think it's called consciousness. You know, sometimes we can live our whole lives unconsciously, just doing what we're told and what everybody else is doing. And so when you're tuned into like the vibration of the world around you, you can't not act, right?
But so Sandy, before we get to you, but how did you do it though, Rick? Like, did it just come to you one day and you thought, oh gosh, I'm going from the for-profit world to the nonprofit world. Was there an aha moment in your life?
I mean, I started when I was like 17 or 18, and I would actually go hand out sandwiches. I would make peanut butter sandwiches and hand them out to the homeless, panhandling areas of town. And then the reward you get inside, it stimulates you in some way that you've never felt before.
Priceless. It is priceless.
It is priceless.
Right?
And so one thing leads to another. I worked in soup kitchens. I volunteered in a homeless shelter, and then I was hooked.
Wow. And Sandy, how about you?
Well, Xerox, they had a policy of each office had a charity that they supported. And the first year I started, it was suicide prevention. And I actually worked as a suicide prevention worker. And I think that was the aha wake-up moment because it stirred something inside of me. I think it's that compassion. You're not born with it, but I do think a compassionate heart develops as you get exposed to things in your environment, in your family life, whatever. And so I think it's important to have that because I think it helps you be able to judge people in the right way, and not that they're doing anything wrong, but they're also, they need to be put on the right track. And they need volunteers and people in nonprofit in their leadership and executive positions to really help these people kind of find themselves. Because I'm exactly the same way. I mean, these people didn't just want to be homeless. Most of them have severe mental health and substance abuse issues. There was a guy in front of our church who really just 3 weeks ago got arrested. He was homeless. He was dealing drugs.
Yeah.
That's like almost, how could you imagine that happening? You're in front of a church, you're appealing for funds from people because you're homeless, yet you're using that money to deal drugs.
But you've heard this story, right, Rick? I mean, you've heard it over and over again.
Well, people have a very strong survival instinct. And there's things they don't want to do, but they end up doing because they have to survive. And it's amazing what that instinct will allow you to do. So it's incumbent upon us to show concern, because obviously if somebody is willing to sell their body or sell drugs or sleep in the woods with ants and whatever, they've given up on themselves. So when we can show interest and compassion to them, there's a chance they might care about themselves again.
Exactly.
So let me ask you guys this, and of course we realize it, but just to say it, if someone is watching this show or listening to the show and thinking, okay, I feel really bad, I really feel bad for that person, but why should I care? Why should I care? And if you think about it, you should care because it also impacts on the selfish side. And I hate even using that word, and I apologize in advance for that. But it helps your entire community grow, right?
It really creates a picture of what your community looks like. You would hear from people like as a county commissioner that came in to look at our city. Maybe they're traveling the state. And if you have panhandlers all over the place, that's going into their picture of what Tampa looks like and what we're made of. But how we're dealing with that problem really, I think, assist in helping them want to come here because they know that we have a community that's dealing with this problem. And one of it is, I think what's really important is that we look at it as a housing first issue, that we give total services to these homeless people, that we don't just give them a cot or a bed, let them go in and out as they please. day in and day out,
Right.
that they're getting the proper services. Like, you'd be surprised how many people have family members. They don't even know how to connect to them.
Right.
And once you help them do that, it reunites that family. It gets him out of being a homeless person in our community. He can start getting his Social Security checks
Right.
again and start to live a life. And I think that's important.
Rick, when you hear the word problem, you know, and you know, we refer to it as a problem, does that break your heart? You know?
Well, I mean, obviously, as government would consider it, it's a problem, right? It interferes with the normal workings of our society. So sometimes we see things through a governmental lens, but they're humans, right? They're our brothers, they're our sisters, they could be our kids. So they're not problems. The abuse and the depression and the mental health, those are the problems, but the person is a beautiful child of God, right? So
Right.
we need to see that the unique, precious individual, and then show the compassion, and maybe, you know, we're the only thing between them and survival.
Gosh. Okay, on that, let's go to a break, and then I want to delve deeper when we come back on some of the points, actually, and usually the points that you put together, Rick, that you would like to discuss along here with Sandy. All right,
Great.
thank you so much. We're going to go to a break, guys. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Why is Precision Garage Door a name you can trust? Because of the Precision Promise.
Precision Garage Door, this is Sophia. How may I help you?
Your call is answered day or night by a live person ready to help.
That's our promise.
Our technicians will arrive on time in one of our recognizable, fully stocked vehicles.
That's our promise.
And there's never an extra charge for nights or weekends to repair your garage door. Quality service quickly from a name you can trust. That's the Precision Promise.
Precision Door Service, a name you can trust.
Label Swap is a retail store that you can bring in the items you don't want anymore. We will buy them for either a cash offer or store credit, and you can also shop the items as well. We carry anything from H&M, Lululemon, up to your luxury items like Gucci and Louis Vuitton. There's nothing really around like it here in the market. It is a fun, personalized experience.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to On the Record. We're talking about positive change throughout the nation and inspiring people that we know that are making this possible. So, Rick Kearney, Sandra Murman, thank you so much for being here. A heavy topic today, though. We're talking about homelessness. What do you feel causes homelessness? I know that's a huge issue, and we did touch upon it at the beginning of the show, but I guess maybe, why is it more males that are homeless than females, right? I think there's some strong stats supporting that. Who's going to take it?
I mean, number one, there are a lot of veterans that are homeless.
And that, honestly, that breaks
and
my heart. They do everything to serve our country. They sacrifice their life.
And they're on the street.
Right.
No veterans should be homeless. I think that every community should adopt a policy of functional zero homeless for veterans being homeless. And I think that's so important. But you got to understand, I mean, all the trauma they see and go through when they're overseas or at war or something. And a lot of them have PTSD, issues that need to be really worked through with the proper therapist or whoever they have available to them. But if they don't deal with it, they go home, and I mean, just it breaks your heart to hear the stories. The Veterans Services Center at the county, they will tell you stories of people, phone calls they get. But this is why the suicide rate's so high among veterans, is because they can't deal with the issues anymore. And I do think our communities need to rally around our veterans, do everything we can to make sure they are not on the street and they get services.
100%. We're so passionate about it. Rick, talk to us too about that issue, but also about what a difference you're making with your company. And honestly, humility aside, like, share everything that you're doing and how you're using your company to help.
Right. Well, the first question is, what causes homelessness? Well, it's money. If you are living in the lower socioeconomic sector, depending on which measurement you use, 13 to 25% of our America society lives in poverty.
Wow.
And so it's a big number. That means they're 1 or 2 paychecks away from being homelessness. Well, all it takes is one car accident or one illness or one traumatic experience, and you can't work, and then you're homeless. And then that one homeless experience could lead to a cascade of others, or maybe you're lucky and you get out. So it's money, and then combined with all these other mental health, substance abuse, and health issues, and then self-caring and so forth. So our company, what we do is, we're a family-friendly company anyway. We try to allow our employees to make decisions for themselves and kind of be their own entrepreneur. But both the employees and their spouses and their children and their extended families, they're proud of their employee breadwinner in that family, because they work for a company that devotes a lot of resource to addressing homelessness, substance abuse, mental health, housing, and the broader pictures. So that's where I spend most of my time, and a good bit of financial capital is in building programs that then can eventually self-support themselves. And that's the difference with government. Is government is not great on making investments. They're good at applying for funds, grants, and so forth, and then using it to meet a need. But they're really not in the business of entrepreneurship. So that's why it needs to be a partnership between the private for-profit sector, and then government can come in behind and then make it enduring.
Sandy, react to that.
Well, I mean, as he was talking, so many thoughts were going. A lot of communities have addressed homelessness very successfully. Seattle, St. Louis. The governments have gotten involved in solving the problem, and they've owned it. Here in Florida, I think our governments don't know quite exactly how to totally own them. So they kind of, it's pushed off to like our homeless initiative group, who's trying to come up with it's getting funding from the federal government to address these problems. But I think what his company is doing is phenomenal. If every company did a little bit to help our homeless families, to really help our veterans, I mean, we would put a huge dent in this problem.
Yeah. So talk about that, Rick. How can we get other companies involved, or what would you say?
Well, it's interesting about the workforce that we have today. They care about different things than maybe some of us cared about when we were young, aspiring, young workers. So they care about impact, right? They care about the impact of themselves on the world. They care about if they're going to work for a company, whether it's a Google or a little grocery store, is what are we doing to prevent, abusing the planet, or, wages, from children, labor camps and stuff like that. Everybody cares about where's this food coming from, where's this product coming from, and how is it being produced and marketed and so forth. So I think companies need to tap into that, and if they can tap into that thought process, they will attract the best and brightest of this next generation. And I just hope that their HR departments that are doing that are speaking to their strategy people about, this is what we need to be doing in the community as a corporation with a conscience.
So interesting about that, about attracting to the right people, right? So would you say to some entrepreneurs out there might be asking, but gosh, I mean, I need to make a living, and I need to bring in the money. How would you answer that question, Rick? Do you think that the money comes and the financial success comes by building a model like this? I
do, and you've seen a number of corporations that they say X% of our profits, go to this cause or this charity and I think that tends to draw a certain consumer.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I will say myself, I'll put it on the record. If I see that a company is giving a certain percentage to a nonprofit group or the veterans, I do have a tendency to choose that company over other companies.
Right. And then, you can go any direction you want to as far as, single-use plastics or
Right.
carbon impacts or whatever, airline. Everybody can think about how can we do a better job, because people are much more aware of that today. And the younger you go into these generations, they care more about these impacts on the world, because they're going to have to live with the things that we're doing.
Right. It's incredible. Like my 15-year-old, honestly, she is so concerned about the environment. I mean, she really is very cognizant of the environment. And I know we're going through, again, the show is unedited and unscripted. But how do we get young people, or people just in general, to have that compassionate heart?
Well, I actually think the younger generation coming up now is much more social conscious and aware of issues. And I think it's because in their school and their classroom, they're having to do service hours. They're having to do projects. I never had that going through a school. But I think there's a whole generation that's coming up now that cares a lot about our communities and what direction that they're going to be headed in. And I think it's because of the school system. Our educational system, thankfully, is telling them to go out and make a difference, get involved in something. People say to me all the time, they want to run for office. I said, well, what's your issue? What's important to you? What are you going to claim your fame on? And, and so they don't really say anything. They don't know. So I think this younger generation, though, they're going to say, like your daughter says, the environment. My daughter and her husband, they're so involved in healthcare and making sure that kids have adequate health care. So there's a variety of issues across that. And then I think the corporate world, like what Rick does, can really start to help with the homelessness. And I do think that's where that problem needs to start, and they need to partner with government in their local communities.
That's exactly what he said.
And get the money that's coming in, because the federal government is starting to show money now, funding. You mentioned money is the problem. Totally agree with that.
Is there money out there? I mean, is there a lot of money out there?
Well, that answer is changing on a monthly basis.
Yes, it is.
So the secret is to how to tap it, because if you look at the federal level, there's a lot of money. There's literally billions of dollars that are not spent, not earmarked. They don't know where that money is going to go. So I think it's going to be incumbent on some of us as communities and as corporations or as nonprofits to basically write bids or grants, requests, and then run them through whether it's your county interface to the Fed or straight to your congressperson to get into that pipeline, because you're going to see that money start to get out into the hands of people.
But not everybody's a Rick Kearney, right? and I mean that. I mean that with all sincerity, or a Sandy Murman. So how do you do it? Like if I'm sitting at home thinking, okay, you know what, I want to do this, or I want to get my community involved. How do you do it? How do you start?
You tell people what's your passion, what's your issue, and then go do something about it.
Well, there are some people that are just going to go out there like me and hand out peanut butter sandwiches. But, you might look at apprenticing or interning or volunteering. Pick your cause, whether it's, unwed mothers or victims of abuse or children's issues or homeless issues or veterans. There's plenty of needs out there. Go intern for free or volunteer for free. And then you become a resident expert on that matter, and then you can choose your path.
Do you both know, speaking of choosing paths, do you both, and again, humility aside, both know in your heart that you are impacting positive change?
No, or think, or believe.
Or believe. Maybe believe is a better word.
I sure hope so.
I hope so too. I mean, absolutely. And I do think the funding now is kind of geared more towards housing, because that's kind of the new thing right now is finding housing. So I know our homeless initiative group is using our funding to try and get homeless people into shared housing, into to try and cut down the number of people that are on the streets and not put them in these drop-in centers, which I'm not totally in favor of, because I don't think it solves the problem. I think it exacerbates it.
Yes.
Are you optimistic that as we go ahead in years, as the years go by, that there will be positive change? Are you seeing it?
Yes, except the need is growing. So hopefully the supply of caring people increases with the demand of social services, because it's not getting less, it's getting more.
Right.
Which is, COVID certainly did not help with that.
COVID, the economy, mental health. The number one health issue by many studies is loneliness. And look at what our society is doing, especially to seniors or to people who live in these shelter-in-place communities. They get lonely, and then it creates physical and mental health issues. So we've got to become more community connected. We have to care more about our neighbors. We have to become more involved in each other's lives. And in the inner city, that doesn't exist.
And really, one of the fastest growing segments of homeless is the elderly right now. They're probably right behind the veterans. They, because of inflation, the economy, the whole situation, they can't find housing. And they don't get enough in their pension or Social Security to help make rent. And that, I think, is a huge issue. And I do think that's where corporations can help on the homeless, is maybe adopt or to try to build some housing somewhere and allow the community to put senior residents that, can benefit from being in that housing.
Yes, big need.
A lot of great ideas. And boy, it was such a pleasure having you both on the show. I know it was again, a tough subject, but we're getting the message out, and hopefully it will resonate, right? It will resonate. On that note, if you would like to suggest a show or would like to be a guest on the record, please send us an email at production@redhousestreaming.com. And we'd love to have you. You can also share the show on multiple social media platforms right over there. We're also on Roku with some major announcements coming soon that we're very excited about. But back here in the studio, Rick Kearney, thank you so much for flying in,
my pleasure.
for being on the record. Sandy Murman,
cool.
I know he flew in to be on the show. And Sandy, of course, it's so wonderful
I flew in my
to
car.
see you.
Yeah, well, about the same.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Serena, for you making a difference.
Oh, gosh.
You're here.
Thank you.
You're the best.
Thank you. And I didn't pay them to say that, I promise. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great week.